Hi boys and girls, we're going to talk about transportation today and we're going to do our ABC chant. So let's look at it and let's look at the first red letter and that is a T. Big T, little t, what begins with T? T, trucks. Trucks begins with T. And then I'm going to look at my alphabet chart and see if I can find a T. So I'm going to go across until I match it up. Let's see. It's not there. Nope. How about down on this row? Nope. How about down on this row? Nope. How about this? Oh, we found it. Now you could also do it this way. Just say it. If you don't know the letters, I know you know how to say the alphabet. Ready? Here we go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T. It goes right there. Big E, little e, what begins with E? Engineer. Engineer begins with E. That's the person who makes the train operate. Big Y, little y. What begins with Y? Yield sign. Yield sign begins with Y. And this is when we're driving, we want to let other drivers go first. Okay, so if we're going to find the Y, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y. Big J, little j, what begins with J? Jet airplane. Jet airplane begins with J. So a jet has something called jets. Turbines on it. J. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Big S, little s. What begins with S? Sailboat. Sailboat begins with S, and you see the white right here? Those are called sails. And some sailboats also have a motor and some don't. But what happens is those strong winds in the ocean push the sails and that helps the boat move. Or it makes the boat move. Okay, where's our S? If I don't know, I can go across until I find it. I found it. Big I, little I, what begins with I? Ignition key. Ignition key begins with I. And what we do, that's the key that it goes in the ignition to start our car. Start other vehicles too sometimes. If you have a key that goes in. Where's I? There's I. Big C, little c, what begins with C? Cargo boat. Cargo boat begins with C. And then cargo boat, I want to show you that picture. It is a giant boat. Sometimes it's called a freightliner. And it holds the big, ginormous big boxes that go on trucks and trains that holds cargo that moves across the water. There's the C. Big C, little c, what begins with C? Conductor. Conductor begins with C. Are you noticing where the conductor is? In a train, making the train go. There's my C. Big G, little g, what begins with G? Garage. Garage begins with G. Sometimes we put our cars inside a garage. Sometimes they're touching the house. Sometimes they're not. There's my G. What begins with B? Bus. Bus begins with B. There's my B. Big F, little f. What begins with F? Feet. Feet begin with F. Did you know feet are transportation? Can they get you from here to there? Yes, they can. Feet are transportation. Oh, there's my F. Big W, little w. What begins with W? Water. Water begins with W. What kind of transportation happens on water? Yeah, boats. All kinds of boats. And there's my W. Big U, little u. What begins with U? Unload. Unload begins with U. When you take the materials off the truck, off the train, off the ship, you unload them. There's my U. Big P, little p. What begins with P? Passengers. Passengers begin with P. So passengers can go on as long as you're not operating the vehicle going from here to there, you're the passenger. There's my P. Do you remember the trick for finding it if you're not sure? Yeah, you could say the alphabet. You could read through it slowly. Big P, little p. What begins with P? Pilot. Pilot begins with P. Who's operating that plane? A pilot is. There's my P. Big Y, little y. What begins with Y? Yellow taxi. Yellow taxi begins with Y. A taxi is a car that you can rent, kind of like if you've ever been in an Uber or a Lyft. But these yellow taxis were some of the first ones that were around, and they were all yellow. And in some big cities, they still have much more of them, and they're still around here. They're just not as we just don't see them quite as much. There's my Y. Big W, little w. What begins with W? Windows. Windows begins with W. All of our vehicles are going to have windows. Oh, no, I take that back. There's a couple that we have that don't, because a bicycle does not have windows, and a hot air balloon does not have windows, and some boats don't have windows. So I apologize. Some forms of transportation have windows, just like our houses, and we can see through them. And our W's right there. Big U, little u. What begins with U? Underpass. Underpass begins with U. So in this picture, I want you to look at the bottom part, because it's where it goes under. Under the road is called an underpass. And so the cars can go on them. Trains can go under things. And my U is right there. There's my U. Big L, little l. What begins with L? Luggage. Luggage begins with L. So luggage could be suitcases. Maybe that's how you're bringing it. Maybe you're taking your special things when you go from here to there. Maybe you're taking them in a bag, and it's called luggage when it carries your very special things that you're going to take with you. Sometimes they're Yes, that luggage. Big M, little m, what begins with M? Motorcycle. Motorcycle begins with M. Can a motorcycle get you from here to there? There's my M. Big V, little v, what begins with V? Vehicles. Vehicles begins with V. So all the cars on the road, those are all vehicles. All those trucks, vehicles. Everything that's moving, you see. Big R, little r, what begins with R? Railroad. Railroad begins with R. You find the R? Big X, little x, what begins with X? And this one we say X-ray scanner. X-ray scanner begins with X. Lots of times when you're traveling from here to there, you go through a scanner. They want to make sure everybody's staying safe. Can you find your X? Big S, little s, what begins with S? And now I want you to look at the first two letters. And the first two letters are SH, and SH says shh, 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 ship. Ship begins with S. Can you find the S? Big S, little s, what begins with S? School bus. School bus begins with S. Can you get from here to there on a school bus? You could. Big L, little l, what begins with L? Locomotive. Locomotive begins with L. Are you noticing that? Is locomotive another word for train? It's a little bit fancier. Can you find your L? Big K, little k, what begins with K? Keys. Keys begins with K. So we still have keys. They don't always look like this. Sometimes they just look like a rectangle and they let you in your car. And this was when Mrs. Nicolosi was learning to drive. We just said keys. We didn't even have key fobs. And now we have fancy key fobs. Can you find your K? Big S, little s, what begins with S? Street sign. Street sign begins with S. So the signs that you see when you're riding around town with your adult who's driving you and you're a passenger and you see signs, those are street signs. Big H, little h, what begins with H? Helicopter. Helicopter begins with H. So these fly in the sky. And the helicopter is really interesting. Like a plane has to take off, a helicopter can go up. Super interesting. Big C, little c, what begins with C? Captain. Captain begins with C. So if you're making a boat go from here to there, you're a captain if you're operating it. Captain is going to operate the boat. Big A, little a, what begins with A? Ah. This is an ah. Automobile. Automobile. Ah. Not ah. It says ah. Sometimes it says ah. Okay, automobile. Automobile begins with A. I want you to look. Automobile is a fancy word for car. Automobile. Big T, little t. What begins with T? Tires. Tires begin with T. Big D, little d. What begins with D? Driver. Driver begins with D. So if you're making a car go from here to there, then you are a driver. Big B, little b. What begins with B? Bicycle. Bicycle begins with B. All right, my friends, if you want to try this again next week and you want to do it by yourself, just watch through the video and turn down my sounds, and then you can do the chant by yourself. And you can always turn up the volume and I'll help you, and then you can find what letter it is as well. All right, have fun. See you next time.